Lyah's letters. Lyah. To Eden of Orus. Salutations. You do not know me, though we have stood within sight of one another twice. The first time, you were descending the marble steps of the Hall of Measures while the crowd knelt to let you pass. The second, you were seated beneath the eastern lanterns, listening to petitions I presume you had no intention of granting. On neither occasion did your gaze settle long enough to remember a face such as mine. That is no grievance, though. Persons in your position are trained to look past certain people. My name is Lyah, from the hills beyond the little enclave. I have recently completed your volumes, and I will begin with honesty. They are comprehensive works of considerable structure. Few living minds could arrange such vast histories into so ordered a form. In that regard, I am not surprised by their reputation. However, I have identified several errors in your accounts of the Desergonians, and I write in the hope that you will consider the following particulars based on good authority. Not to educate you, but to preserve accuracy where it matters. Let me begin where your account begins. Origins of the Desergonians in Origins of the Ancients. You write that in the beginning the great light created the first suns, and from them came the 7 guardians and the witnesses for mortal guidance. This is partly correct. The great light created the first suns. From them came the 7 guardians, formed in pride and burdened to watch over mortals after the light's departure. But the witnesses, now called Desergonians, were not of their making. They were created by mortals. When the light left, the grand structure of existence could not hold in its original form. The pillars of order began to fail, and the suns, unwilling to see what they had built collapse, chose not to abandon the framework. Instead, they created the guardians to preserve what could still be preserved, and then ascended into the ethereal realms in search of the light, hoping for restoration that may never come. Afraid that 7 watchers would not suffice in a world slipping into instability, the mortals fashioned the Desergons from whatever residual essence of the suns they could access. Their purpose was simple: to roam the world and report any and all irregularities they encountered. And yet, as you are aware, nothing of significance ever came to light. Over time, both the guardians and the witnesses drifted into obscurity, falling into the crevices of what can only be described as an existential void, neither remembered properly nor entirely lost. Whether the guardians still endure, I cannot say with certainty. I can only assume. The witnesses, however, I know for a fact remain among us, still roaming the earth without direction or recognition. This I have from reliable information. I should also clarify this. I do not present this as a lesson, nor as an attempt to supersede your understanding. What I have written is all I presently know. I had expected to say more when I began, but clarity does not always expand with intention. My concern is not superiority of knowledge, but accuracy of record. I hope you will consider these corrections in the spirit in which they are offered. I would be interested to know your response and whether your sources differ from those I have encountered. I eagerly look forward to your feedback. To Lyah. Greetings. Your letter, dated the 19th of Oc, has been received. I acknowledge it with gratitude. It is not without merit that you chose to write, nor without courtesy that you recall our prior encounters. Few do, and fewer still take the trouble to engage in written discourse beyond necessity. For this, I extend my appreciation. On the matter of your inquiries regarding the witnesses, I must, regrettably, withhold the disclosure of my sources. Such records are not suited to correspondence of this kind. You will understand, I trust, the constraints under which certain histories are preserved. Nevertheless, I assure you, the information is not conjectural. Your reservations concerning my claims are noted, though I would not hasten to dismiss them as implausible. It may yet be that opportunity arises for a fuller presentation of these findings at the Academy. Should such occasion present itself, I shall not refuse it. Concerning the role of the Desergonians in the great works of antiquity, the towers, the pyramidal foundations, and the lesser yet significant edifices, I must be clear. They had no hand in their construction. These were works of mortals alone. Mortals, moreover, who sought in various ages to replicate vessels and structures whose original principles they no longer properly understood. But that is a matter for another discussion, and perhaps another time. The Desergonians, as you correctly note, were not designed for labor nor for martial function. They were not instruments of construction, nor implements of war. Their purpose was observational alone, to watch, to register, and to persist. It is also correct that their emergence postdates the egress. Thus they bear no relation, direct or indirect, to the construction of the orb. This brings me to a matter that has occupied my thought in recent months, more insistently so in light of certain recent and regrettable developments. I shall set it down here not as conclusion, but as conjecture in formation. Purpose, I have long maintained, is the first principle of intelligible existence. Remove it, and what remains tends either toward stagnation or disorder. In the latter case, one sees not mere decay, but deviation, what some have uncharitably termed the others. Both the Seven and the Desergonians were, at their inception, directed toward protection. Not identical in scope, nor equal in capacity, but aligned in function, the safeguarding of mortal existence. Yet, as you yourself have observed in indirect fashion, there was in time nothing left for them to protect. Or so it appeared. In the centuries that followed, both orders were employed, repurposed, and in certain cases misappropriated in ways not entirely consistent with their founding intention. Despite this, neither has diminished into absence. They persist, endure. And it is here that interpretation becomes necessary. For if an entity is created for protection and finds no object of protection, it does not follow that it ceases to act. It follows only that it seeks a new condition under which its original mandate might again become meaningful. This is not pessimism, it is structural reasoning. When long-formed systems are deprived of function, they do not quietly dissolve. They adapt. And adaptation in complex intelligences rarely proceeds without consequence. I will not overstate the matter. Yet I would be remiss not to observe that when conditions grow unstable, it is not irrational to anticipate recalibration. You suggest they will rise. I would phrase it differently. They will reassert relevance, one way or another. Whether that appears as restoration or disruption depends entirely upon the state of the world they re-enter. Still, I do not present this as certainty, only as interpretation grounded in pattern. I would be interested in your own view upon this matter, should you find time to reply. Eden of Orus. Dear Eden of Orus, I was made aware of your loss. Allow me, before anything else, to extend my condolences. I do so not as formality, but as one who has also known the severing of a bond that could not be replaced. Such absences do not mend in the way lesser wounds do. They do not close, they simply alter the shape of what remains. If there is any consolation to be spoken, it is only this, that what was shared does not perish with the body. It persists, in recollection, in thought, in the intervals between moments. It is in these fractured continuations that the departed are, in a manner of speaking, still retained. May that be of some small steadiness to you. Concerning your second correspondence, I confess I was initially struck by your apparent distance from the accounts of the great orb. Though, in reflection, this is not unexpected. Access to the relevant strata of record is uneven at best. Permit me, therefore, to set down what I have come to understand. When the great light withdrew, the structure of the world entered into collapse. The first sons, recognizing their complicity in the failing of the order, resolved upon ascension, not as abandonment, but as pursuit. Their intention was singular, to locate the light and return it so that restoration might be made possible. Only through its return, they believed, could the fractures of existence be properly repaired. In time, despite considerable hesitation, mortals were drawn into the undertaking. Whether through persuasion, necessity, or the promise of restoration, they contributed their labor without which the undertaking could not proceed. Materials were gathered, transported, and refined across vast distances, much of it directed toward the northern extremities, the Arctic reaches, where conditions permitted the required concentration of construction. There, over the span of many years, the ancients, the first suns themselves, fashioned what would come to be known as the Great Orb. Upon its completion, they ascended, bearing it into the upper reaches of the heavens. What followed is, as you know, the subject of much fragmentation in the records. In the aftermath, mortals attempted to reproduce what had been witnessed, though never fully understood. The sketches you reference, the engines, the interlocking gears, the cellular housings, the pulley systems and auxiliary structures, are all remnants of this effort. They demonstrate ambition without comprehension, imitation without the governing principle. When these efforts failed, a further attempt was made to elevate architecture itself into transcendence. Thus arose the so-called Great. The phrase recorded in multiple sources is consistent. Come, let us build a tower to the heavens and take hold of what lies hidden there. Then shall we be as the sons of the light. As you have already observed, this endeavor did not achieve its intended outcome. What it produced instead was dissonance, material, structural, and existential. Regarding the crates recovered from my father's holdings, I must clarify that what you have seen represents only a fraction of their contents. There were other materials, some catalogued, others not. I would advise caution in relying upon his interpretations of those records. You are not incorrect to suspect inconsistency therein. I believe you already carry your own reservations on that matter. As for myself, I intend, when circumstance allows, to bring all extant material into proper form at the Academy. There remains much that is unorganized, and more still that has not yet been compared across sources. Lastly, if it would not be an imposition, I would very much appreciate the opportunity to examine the blueprints in your possession. I have yet to see the original schematics in full. I assure you they would be handled with the utmost care and returned without delay. I await your response.